Okay, it is now time to dig through the acid rain files and see what we can figure out about which suspect is guilty of the acid rain that's falling in the gray area. So we start here with a couple of newspaper articles. Oh, and by the way, as I'm reading this, you pause me and go to those questions or come back to me, and all the answers will be here. So the first article says, and I'm looking right here now, that the gray area is gray air. Gray area listed as severe by Environmental Protection Agency. The gray area is one of 33 regions in the country that have not cleaned up their air enough to meet federal smog standards, the Environmental Protection Agency said today. Last year, the gray area was listed as serious, but this year it has been changed to severe because it's gotten worse. Scientists blame local polluters as well as pollution carried by the winds from other areas. Only one city in the country is now ranked as extreme. For most people in the United States, the air is cleaner than it was 5 years ago because of the EPA's efforts. So it does seem that the gray area has a definite air pollution problem. Here's another one. Local factory releasing smoke at night. It's not a plot, says Latoya Factory. So this suspect, Latoya Factory, is involved in this article. The local toy factory has been releasing many of their pollutants at night. During the day, the factory mainly releases white smoke, which can be mistaken for steam, but they save any dark pollutants to release at night when it's harder to see. We only release the darker smoke at night because that's when our factory has been set up to do the work that makes it, said owner Latoya Factory. It's not a plot. And then here's a small article titled Car Makers Agree to Make Cleaner Cars. The 6 biggest car manufacturers in the world have agreed to make cars that pollute less. The added cost per car will probably be about $95. 2 states have demanded that the manufacturers also be required to make 2% of their cars electric or zero emission vehicles. So the push towards making more fuel efficient cars because they can make pollutants that cause acid rain. Next up, we have a couple letters to the editor of the Synchrony City Chronicle, which would be kind of like the Newark Advocate or the Columbus Dispatch. And so this first one says, Editor, I love my car, and you're not going to get me to take the bus. In your newspaper last week, you said that air pollution from our cars and factories is making acid rain and killing our fish. That can't be right. Here's why. If acid rain is falling on the Rafta River, then it must be falling on the Foe and Mississippi rivers too. Acid rain makes lakes clear because it kills living things, including algae. The Rafta looks clear, but the Mississippi and Foe don't. So explain that to me. So there's someone that wants to keep their car and they think that the research so far is off base. Now look at who wrote this one. This letter to the editor is by Latoya Factory, the one that was just accused of putting pollution in the air at night. She says, Dear Editor, thank you for your suggestion in last week's newspaper to put scrubbers on our smokestacks to cut down on our pollution. We want to pollute the air as little as possible, but we're at a business and we have to make a profit. The scrubbers you suggest would cut pollution, but they would cost too much money for our company. We have won an award for cleaning up our pollution on the Mississippi River, so we really do care. Okay, now here's honestly, it's a small part of this file, but it's a super important part. There's been chemical analysis done on the gray area rain. 88% of the acid in it is nitric acid. Only 12% is sulfuric. Listen to that again. 88% nitric, 12% sulfuric. Now, this is confirmation that Latoya Factory is right. This is the Environmental Action Award. This award is to certify that the Gray Area Toy Factory has reduced their water pollutants by 11%. The wildlife and people of our country for decades to come will benefit from your efforts. That's from the Clean Water Association. Now we move to the next page. And check this out with me. So this is showing a specific way that acid rain can harm fish. A pH of 5.5 is acidic, but not terribly acidic. And brown trout eggs, they develop normally and then develop into adult fish. But if a pH is 4.6, and remember we have some waterways at a 4, the eggs will just simply not develop even though the eggs were deposited. Okay, now this chart here shows you where nitric acid rain comes from and sulfuric acid. And remember, in the gray area, it's mostly nitric. So this is showing cars and trucks, electric utilities, and then other. So mostly cars and trucks. Remember, in the gray area, we don't have a power plant, at least not a coal burning one. And then the sulfuric acid comes mostly from electric utilities, but again, we don't have a coal burning power plant. So in second place would be factories. So think nitric acid rain mostly from cars, and sulfuric acid rain really is from factories when we're thinking about the gray area. Okay, now to finish up, what pH can water life live in? And it gives you here a bunch of things. Bacteria, some of them can live in very harsh conditions, those single-cell creatures, from a pH of 2 to 13. Depending on the plant, pH 6.5 to 12.5, they do okay in basic soils. Most fish, we remember, are 5 to 9, but there are some fish that can only do a 6, like bass and bluegill. And then small snails and mussels and clams, those things are 7.5 to 10, so they don't do well in an acidic waterway at all. And many animals, small animals like little tiny insects, are more sensitive. They can only live in a 7 to a 9. Okay, and then you can see in this little cartoon picture the effect of acid rain on fish. We know that if it's too acidic, some fish might survive, but many will die. And even if the adult fish live, they can't have babies. Okay, so what's the effect of acid rain on water plants like algae, which is technically a protist? They're not able to take in nutrients very well, and their growth is stunted, and eventually they'll die. So it says here, aren't healthy lakes a bit acidic? And it says most lakes are a bit acidic, but the lakes with the most life in them are a little basic. So it's actually good to be like an 8. Water plants can make more oxygen if the lakes are slightly basic. Water life needs oxygen to breathe, in the water to breathe. Okay, then it's showing here, how does acid rain affect the soil? When the acid rainwater goes through the soil, it can change the soil's pH and wash away nutrients. The tiny animals that feed on the nutrients die, and the larger animals will die that feed on them. Okay, now this part I'm going to slow down a little bit on because one of your follow-up questions has to do with it. I really want you to analyze these with me. So we know it's acid raining with a pH of 4 on the whole gray area. Notice right here, if the acid rain hits limestone, limestone is a base, and it will neutralize the acid, and see how it says it's a normal pH. But if your area is granite, acid rain on granite does not neutralize the acids, and your waterway will stay acidic. So this part says, when acid rain falls on some kinds of soil, it can be neutralized, made to be not an acid. This is also called buffering the acid. Limestone and clay are two soils that can neutralize or buffer acids. Granite, that's that igneous rock over there, does not neutralize acids. Okay, now study this with me. The geology, the rock type of the rafta area. See? Granite. So think to yourself, does granite neutralize acids? Nope. But then over here, the geology in the western side of the map, the Faux and Mississippi, is limestone. And so it says here that the limestone does neutralize the acid. Okay, and so honestly, oh no, I do need to share with you this. Yep. Okay, so the idea of scrubbers, that if you put scrubbers in a smokestack, they'll actually filter out the pollutants and help to make normal rain. So when Latoya Factory is saying no scrubbers, like they're expensive, that's a bit of a problem. So what about this? What if the factories just put taller smokestacks? Would that help? And in the 1960s, some factories were doing that. And they said they came up with a solution. They made their smokestacks taller, and the pollutants blew far away in the wind, even sometimes to other countries. But before too long, these factories received complaints for causing acid rain problems in other places. Folks, the idea here is that the wind actually moves the air pollutant, so it doesn't always acid rain right on the place that actually made the acid rain in the first place. Okay, I think that's all that you really need to hear to do your questions now. So tackle those acid rain questions. Underneath them, you'll see that there's a chance for you to vote of the 4 suspects we've met so far. And let me show you their faces. We've met Don Montuno, who owns the oil refinery, for one thing he owns. Avery One, who's the car driver. Cannonball, who owns the water slide. Remember, that sounds like cannonball. And just today, we met Latoya Factory, who owns the toy factory. You're going to have a chance to vote and explain why. You're going to pick one of those 4 you think so far is the most guilty.